truly committed and passionate to be able to have the self-discipline to come here today. On April 9th, I should tell you, my name is Sarah Stern, and I'm the founder and president of the Endowment for Middle East Truth, and it's really my pleasure to welcome you here today. On April 9th, Iranian President Rouhani boasted that, quote, "Today and throughout the past year, we have launched 114 new technologies via the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran. This is the message to the world. You have not succeeded and you will not succeed in preventing the progress and development of the Iranian people and their nuclear program. If yesterday you feared our IR-1 centrifuges, well, here you go." Today, on April 18th, which is Army Day in Iran, President Rouhani used the occasion to declare, "If we have a problem in the region, its roots are with Zionism and with American arrogance." He called on Muslim nations to band together and, quote, "restore the historical right of the nation of Palestine," saying that Zionism has been committing crimes in the region for the past 70 years. "The final victory will surely be with the righteous," he said. And that is just looking at Iran. If you look at the map of the Middle East, which our guest does in phenomenal detail and expertise, you see a vastly different map today than what it was 10 or 20 years ago. Turkey under Erdogan, which was once our model of a moderate secular Muslim nation and is a member of NATO, is forging alliances and brokering arms sales with Putin. And Putin wants to reemerge as a leader on the world stage and resurrect the Cold War. We see Lebanon becoming increasingly under more and more control of Hezbollah and Shiite forces. And we see many nations who were once stable 10 or 20 years ago undergoing seismic changes. But we in Washington have yet to adjust our foreign policy paradigms. Many Americans have been asleep at the wheel of history. Here to wake us up this morning is someone who could not be possibly more qualified to do so. Mark Langfan is chairman of Americans for Safe Israel and an Ard Sheva strategy analyst. Mark is a noted security analyst who in 1991 created a three-dimensional topographical raised relief map system of Israel. Viewing the 3D Israel map, one can easily and quickly be informed of many of the underlying resources and security issues involved in the Arab-Israel conflict, such as the West Bank water resources and Israeli defensible borders. Over the past 30 years, Mark has briefed many congressional and Senate offices, the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, Israel Desk, and the New York Times editorial board. Mark has written and published seminal articles concerning the Israel-Middle East region, including the 1992, quote, "demilitarization risks," warning of future Palestinian Katyusha rocket barrages from vacated Israeli territory, and the 1995 U.S. troops on Golan quicksand, warning of the unique topographical dangers of deploying U.S. troops to the Golan Heights, and the 2006 Iran, the fourth Rakistan, exposing the Iranian army of Iraqi insurgents against U.S. forces and of Iran's other regional and strategic goals. Mark has published numerous articles in newspapers and security journals, including the Jerusalem Post, Jinsa's Security Affairs, Pravda, and Ard Sheva. Without further ado, it's my honor to turn the mic over to Mark Langfan.
Thank you, Sarah. Oh, yeah, great. Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
First of all, thank you for braving this very slow news day to come and hear our talk, and thank you, Sarah, for hosting me. And the scheduling could not have been better, but thank you. So what I'm going to talk about today is basically giving everybody here an ability to communicate with their next door neighbors and with people they know so that we can have a better, fuller conversation about Israel and Israel's importance, not just to the Jewish people, but to Western civilization and, quite frankly, to the whole world. And I'm going to start by making sure everybody's got a booklet. Now, I don't want everyone to be afraid of this booklet, so I'm going to give you a little Guido Sarducci. Does anybody here know Saturday Night Live, Father Guido Sarducci? Okay, well, Guido Sarducci, he was a Saturday Night Live skit, and he had a 5-minute university. And what was his 5-minute university? It was everything you remembered about college 30 years afterwards, okay? So I'm gonna give you the short 30-second spiel on what hopefully you're going to remember 30 years from now. And if everyone can look at the front page of this map of the booklet. You'll see a map. And it's really a rather simple map. It's a map just of the Middle East. But it's a map of the Middle East that if you look in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see the country Greece. Now, Greece is a NATO country, meaning the United States of America is sworn to defend Greece against any and all threats. I don't know why this keeps going off, but whatever. So, you have the blue line, that blue dotted line, and just on this page, and we're not including Nigeria, Pakistan, India, that's got 200 million Muslims. Just on this page alone, there is 487 million Muslims in these various states. Sudan has got 40 million Muslims. I am sorry, I'm going to have to pause everything for a second because I just have to get, for some reason it's just blinking on. I think I've got something on my phone. But anyway, so the question is, what is the only country between the 11 million Greeks that we are sworn to defend under NATO and the 487 million Muslims in countries that are in various states of being failed states, being Islamist states, or being states that we really don't have the slightest idea who and what is going to be in power a year from now, or even 6 months from now. Take Sudan, 40 million Muslims in that country, we have no idea what's going on, or Algeria, or for that matter, really the north of Africa. And the only country is Israel. So the question is Israel the cause of instability in this area, or the cause of stability in this area? And I think if you pulled Israel out, you'd have the question for congressmen, their staffers, and for the Pentagon, which is, how much are you going to have to put in the defense budget of the United States of America to defend Greece if Israel were not there and you had all of this going on? Now, you should ask yourself, why am I asking this question? Okay. And now I'm going to tell you a little bit of my background. About 32 years ago, I came up with the idea of this topographic map behind me. And it's really very, very simple. In that you have the Jordan Valley, and you have what is this little mountain range over here. Now, the funny story with that one is I walked into the New York Times editorial board about 30 years ago, and I put down this map, and one of the editors who wrote on Israel for the New York Times editorial board, believe it or not, points to this green area over here and laughs at me in front of the other editors and says, you're never going to be able to show me that the West Bank is important for Israel's security. And I point at what he's pointing at. I said, you know, you're absolutely right. I am not going to be able to show you that that West Bank is important for Israeli security. But that's not the West Bank we know and love to fight about. It's actually this mountain range over here that is the green line up to this point here. That's the West Bank. And it is between this green line and the Mediterranean that is pre-67 Israel. So this is the West Bank, meaning people think it's somehow the West Bank of a river. It's not the West Bank of a river, it's actually a mountain range, or a huge hill range, relatively speaking in Israeli terms, that oversits this blue patch, which holds 80% of Israel's population, and 70% of Israel's Jewish population, and 80% of industrial base. So, how this fits into my story is 30 years ago, I'm in a congressman's office. He's a Republican congressman. And I say, here, I've got these rockets that at that time they were firing them from Lebanon into Israel. I say, and this is a Katyusha rocket range. It's 20 kilometers and roughly 12 miles. So I go and I say, here, you know, if Israel evacuates this in some type of peace deal, then the very same rockets that they're firing from Lebanon, they're going to be able to fire from the West Bank into Tel Aviv. He looks at me, never forget, he had coiffed hair, Republican from Southern California, puts his hand on the West Bank, and he says, Mark, now I understand why the West Bank is important for Israeli security, but I have a problem. And I look at him, and I'm 30 years younger. And I come, you know, I wasn't part of any organization at that time. And I say, well, what's your problem? He says, you want to know my problem? I say, yeah, tell me what your problem is. You sure? I say, yeah. He says, every day, without fail, I have constituents, actual constituents, who come into my office and who tell me that Israel is the cause of instability in the Middle East. Israel is the cause of terrorism. Israel is the cause of high gas prices. Israel is the cause of why the Arabs hate us. Israel is the cause of all. What do I say to them? Because they actually are my constituents. And I look at them and I say, well, okay, what you're really asking me is not whether in Israel with the West Bank or without the West Bank is important for you. You're asking me whether in Israel at all is important for you. And he looks me straight in the eye and he said, that's exactly what I'm asking. This was a pro-Israel congressman, Republican, 30 years ago, basically saying, why is any Israel at all important for the United States of America? And so I go and I say to him, well, you know, you've got Syria over here, Egypt over here, Jordan over there. I see the man's eyes glaze over. And at that exact moment, I said to myself, Mark, I could stand on my head. This is what I thought when I'm sitting there. Mark, I could stand on my head from now till kingdom come, and this man will never understand why Israel is important. Because this man has no idea the map at all. So how am I verbally going to explain to him the map? Can't do it. So on my way home that day, I made my first strategic map, which I will show you later. But that is the moment that I realized that the most important thing I had 30 years ago to share with everyone here and with congressmen and with the Jewish people is not whether the West Bank is important to Israel, but why Israel is important to the world and to the world's security. So for the past 30 years, I've basically been developing a series of maps which very simply explain why Israel is important to the world. So now I'm going to start going through the booklet that we have here. And my concept was everyone might be able to chew and walk and chew gum at the same time. But I have a question. Can you walk and taste the gum you're chewing at the same time? The answer is not so sure. I realized when I was in college that I really couldn't take notes and think at the same time. So whenever I give a talk, I always try to have a booklet that everyone can afterwards go through and digest at their leisure. So what's my thesis? And we'll go to the videotape up here. What's my thesis? My thesis is that today, Israel is as militarily vital to the United States of America as Great Britain was to the United States of America in 1939. Okay? Now, why is that so important? That's important because there is a huge swath of congressmen, staffers, think tanks that are saying the exact opposite. That Israel is a liability at best, and God only knows what at worst. And so really, that's my thesis. And I start off with a simple map that I just showed everybody. And sorry, my maps keep leaving me here. Okay, but now I'm going to give you a quote that you did not find in the New York Times, but you should have. And that quote was on December 13. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo remarked with the Greek acting foreign minister that the Eastern Mediterranean is an important strategic border. The U.S., and this is his quote unquote, is an important strategic border. The U.S. is working to strengthen our relations with stable democracies and democratic allies there. Allies like Greece, Cyprus, and Israel. Now, one would have thought that that would have been a New York Times front page story. That the triumvirate of Greece, Cyprus, and Israel is a vital strategic border where the United States is investing its energy to create and to support. And if it's a border, what is it a border against? Well, everybody, it is a border against exactly what we have shown up. The 487 million Muslims. That is what's going on. So now, unfortunately, there is a history here in that in 1939, Germany was at war with Great Britain. And Great Britain was getting the hell knocked out of it. And the Germans were bombing civilian London to smithereens, and they were basically rampaging through Europe and genocidally murdering everybody around. But at the same time, in 1939, you could have looked at a Air France map, or any map for that matter, and you would have seen that there was nothing, if we had lost Great Britain, there was nothing between Great Britain, between a Nazi-occupied Great Britain, and the United States, except the Atlantic Ocean, where, quite frankly, we didn't even have a two-ocean army, a two-ocean navy at that time. Unfortunately, during this exact 1939 to 1941 period, there were also people who, believe it or not, blamed American Jews for the impetus, or for people who were saying we should go in on the side of Britain, believe it or not. And one of them along with some very big industrialists, was Charles Lindbergh. And I am going to repeat for you what Charles Lindbergh said at the time. And it's dramatic. On September 11th, may all the people who perished on that day rest in peace, he gave a speech. And his speech was the following. There are three groups that are supporting our country towards a war with the British, and those are the Jewish people and the Roosevelt administration. Are the British, the Jewish, and the Roosevelt administration. Specifically about the Jewish people, he said their, meaning the Jews, greatest danger to this country lies in their large ownership and influence in our motion picture, our press, our radio, and our government. I am not attacking the Jewish people, he said, but I am saying the leaders of the Jewish race, for reasons which are understandable from their viewpoint, as they are inadvisable from ours, for reasons that are not American, wish to involve us in this war. We cannot blame them, the Jewish people, for looking out for what they believe their own interests, but we also must look at ours. We cannot allow the natural passions and prejudices of other people to lead our country to destruction. This was a hero, not just a first-term congressman. This was a hero of the American people who, better than anyone else, should have understood the only thing between the United States and Europe was Great Britain. Yet here he was, saying the Jews are to blame and that we should make a peace with Hitler. Now let's just go on the videotape on that one. Had we lost Great Britain, how would we have reinvaded North Africa? How would we have reinvaded North Africa? How would we have reinvaded Italy? How would we have reinvaded Europe? The answer is we couldn't have. And what would have happened if we could not have reinvaded Europe? Well, there are maps. These are all contemporaneous maps that I've strung together from various sources. This one was from Time magazine. They would have invaded South America first. And everyone should remember, we were also fighting Japan at the same time. So we would have had a two-hemispheric war going on where we only had one ocean army and no Great Britain. And to top thing, to add rocket fuel to the fire, they had rockets that we were not even on the infancy of, that, again, Lindbergh was in the total knowledge of. So, just imagine, for the moment, if people like Lindbergh had won the day, and had we not supported Great Britain. Well, the bad news is we have a new Lindbergh. And it's not just one person. I am bringing up Congresswoman Omar because she is just one symptomatic person of what is a deep problem that we're facing. And really the issue here, and I just want to make a little break for a second before I go on. The issue here is when people talk about the two-state solution, my belief is they fall into two distinct camps. One camp is well-meaning. They think, they hope that if you have a, Palestinian state somewhere in the West Bank, that'll be peace and everything will be kumbaya and we'll all go on from there. But there's another camp. That camp, when they talk the code and they say the code of a two-state solution, they mean they want a zero-state solution, which is no Israel. And they are very well aware that, as I showed, you're going to have Katyusha rockets being fired into Tel Aviv from a Palestinian state, causing God only knows what bedlam and mayhem. And their goal in talking a two-state solution is that they want to walk a zero-state solution. So you have to, when you're arguing with people, I jump right over the two-state solution, in that, the congressman 30 years ago who said to me, Mark, I mean in Israel at all, he's talking a zero-state solution. And so he was a well-meaning person. And there are a lot of people that we mouth the phrase, Israel is an ally, Israel is but there is no organic explanation of why Israel is an ally. Yes, they give us intelligence, but the counter-argument to that is, wait a second, we wouldn't need intelligence if there wasn't Israel. Everything would be peaceful. Oh, they help us with weapons. Wait a second. If Israel's not there, who needs weapons? There'd be peace. Don't you get that? So there's really counter-arguments to a lot of the usual support, the usual rationale of why Israel's a strategic ally. But I just go right to the zero-state solution to explain why Israel is a strategic ally. And I ask that simple question. What is the only non-Muslim country between the 487 million Muslims and the 11 million Greeks that we're sworn to defend? Now, as I've shown you, I have in the booklet, on my classic Katyusha rocket graphic. And the key thing that people have to understand is right now when the Palestinians are firing these rockets from the Gaza Strip, almost all the area around the Gaza Strip is farmland. Yes, there are some cities here and there, but it's mostly farmland. So what happens is when they fire these rockets, it's like firing rockets into, Idaho or Montana or, Iowa. I love all those states. However, they're relatively sparsely populated. And so they really don't hit much. But could you imagine a rocket like this flying from Brooklyn to Manhattan? That is the density. And everyone should understand these rockets, they're not little playthings. They carry a 40-pound warhead. Now, I don't know about anybody here. Okay, I curl 20-pound weights. I'm not that strong. Okay. Does anybody here curl 40-pound weight? Okay, nobody here curls a 40-pound weight. I've got except my sister back there. She curls a 40-pound weight. Okay, 40 pounds is a heck of a lot of high explosive. Okay, I wouldn't want to be anywhere near 40 pounds of explosive going off on top of me. So now, ask yourself a question. Let's say you have a Palestinian state and the Palestinians fire these rockets into Tel Aviv. What do the Israeli generals who posit we should give up the West Bank say? They say, no problem, we're going to reinvade the West Bank. Okay. Now, I can't tell you how many Israeli generals have told me that, and I have a very simple answer for them. You're such a brave person. Thank you. Except for one thing. If you're so brave, and you think you're going to reinvade the West Bank, then what I'd like you to do, Mr. Brave person, Mr. Brave General, is come to Capitol Hill with me. Put down my map, and tell pro-Israel congressmen and senators that if there's 1 or 2 Katyusha rockets into Tel Aviv, you're going to reinvade. I am so sorry. I was told to put my do not disturb. Please forgive me, everybody. Okay. I said, if you're so brave, please come to Capitol Hill with my little Katyusha rocket plexiglass. Sit there with a pro-Israel senator and tell them, Mr. Senator, I just want you to know, my peace plan calls for me reinvading the West Bank if there's 1 Katyusha rocket. And they will tell you what they've told me for 30 years. And it's a simple thing. Every time I show this to a congressman, senator, or their staff, they have a simple thing. That's the craziest thing they've ever heard. They're going to reinvade the West Bank over a Katyusha rocket. Tell them, not that's crazy. I said, listen, I'm just the messenger. I just want to get people to understand what everyone's talking about here, okay? So now, everybody should be thoroughly offended by this graphic. And the question is why? And the answer is because in this graphic, I have all of these arrows attacking Israel at once. And the comment from everyone here should be, Mark, how dare you say all of these Muslim countries are going to attack Israel in the event of a Katyusha rocket attack? And I'd say to you, that's a very good question, except for one small little detail. In 2017, in the newspaper that is the mouthpiece of President Erdogan, they put up a graphic right before a very big summit of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, which they said now we should combine all of the Muslim countries and we should attack Israel over Jerusalem. We're not even talking about reinvading the West Bank, we're just talking about Jerusalem now. And the president, and again, this is their mouthpiece, and this was the actual, I mean, you can go on today. It's not something that they took down. This is actually up there today. You can Google it and publish it. In the article, this is President Erdogan of Turkey, who is a NATO country and supposed ally of the United States. He made the statement, and at the time he was the quote-unquote term leader of the organization, of the OIC. He said, those who think Jerusalem belongs to them today will not be able to find a tree to hide behind tomorrow. Now, that seems like a sort of a, what is he talking about? Trees? Hide behind a tree? What is this president of a NATO country talking about? Actually, he is referring to the Sunnah, which is sort of the oral law, if you will, of the Quran. And in that Sunnah, there is one of Muhammad's disciples who wrote down what Muhammad said. And they're referring to the Day of Judgment, which means their, coming of the Messiah, if you will. And so Muhammad is quoted as saying, the last hour, meaning Judgment Day, would not come unless the Muslims will fight against the Jews and the Muslims would kill them until the Jews would hide themselves behind a stone or a tree, and a stone or a tree would say, Muslim, or the servant of Allah, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill me. But the tree of the Gerhard would not say, for it is the tree of the Jews. So this NATO member, president, is making a reference to this section when he is saying that there will not be a tree for anyone to hide behind, when he is talking about Jerusalem. Okay? That is sort of where we were. So now, that's all rather dismal. Now I'm going to give you a little positive. In 2011, I was quoted in a Arach Sheva article as saying, Israel is Greece and Cyprus's line of defense. In fact, I go on to say, Israel is Greece and Cyprus's first and last line of defense, and therefore is NATO's first and last line of defense. And in this article, I had embedded a map. And this map just puts the countries, and it says if Israel's destroyed, what's going to happen to Cyprus, and what's going to happen to the Greek islands, and so on and so forth. That was on a Friday. The next day, in the leading Cyprus newspaper, they actually took my graphic and translated it for me. And wrote a whole story about how this is actually an interesting concept. Believe it or not, my website that had the map had about 30,000 hits that day. And many thousands were from Cyprus, many were from Israel. And how I even found out about this was the Cyprus ambassador to the United States sent me an email, as crazy as that might be, thanking me for my maps. And I should keep him informed about any other maps that I've got there. Because he was very, very interested in it. Sorry. Hold 1 second. I've had a... Okay. So that was 2011. Where are we in 2019 and into the future? Actually, in a wonderful place. We have really come light years to really, if you read that first quote by Pompeo, meaning the Greek-Cyprus connection, has come light years, and it has in no small part been fueled, if I can say a pun, from the oil and from the gas that has been found between Israel and Cyprus. But it is not only that, there is a deep and ever-deepening military alliance between Israel, Greece, and Cyprus, where in fact just this March of 2019, it was reported that Israel is building a military radar station on the island of Crete. That is going to be a joint Greek, Israel, Cyprus military radar station. Now, why is that so important? That's so important that, believe it or not, Crete is geographically part of Greece. And therefore, Crete is protected by NATO. So believe it or not, Israel is going to have a military radar station in Greece that is protected by NATO, which is overlooking the entire Eastern Mediterranean. Now, to give back to a little bit more of the reality of what Israel is facing, I have here a graphic that shows what the Katyushas look like and what the bigger missiles that are in the Gaza Strip look like. In fact, if you have read recently that Israel attacked a missile facility in Syria, my belief is that the missile facility that they were attacking was the missile facility that built these 302 puppies over here. Now, what a 302 is really just the diameter of the missile. So imagine a Katyusha rocket has a diameter of about this foam from here to here. A 302 has a diameter from about here to here. And that will become very important in a second. But to give you an idea, the last major bout of rockets that went, not this recent one, but the real war, you had 3 different zones and types of rockets. One is the Katyusha rocket range, which is the brown. The other is the sort of the caramel color, which is the Fajr 5, which sort of looks like the 302, but the furthest one is the 302. Now, why the 302 is really a game changer, and why Israel's fear that they were in fact putting guidance systems on the 302 is as follows. The 302 has a different capability of warhead. And this is really the game-changing threat that Israel is facing, in that the 302 can field a fuel-air warhead. Now, what a fuel-air warhead is it essentially is a gaseous warhead that lands or is released at a certain height, spreads an envelope of gas, and then is ignited. And it's called a poor person's atomic bomb because it has that effect. Now, this is the kind of knife edge of danger that Israel is up against. But now I want to go back to this diagram. And I want to explain why my Katyusha rocket diagram, my first diagram, really only has the Katyusha rocket. And it's actually very important. Because whenever I show people my Katyusha rocket map, they always say, oh, Mark, you're not showing all the ranges and stuff. When I show them this map, they say, you're not showing all the ranges. And I say, guys, I really am not, I don't want to show all the ranges. In fact, the only range I want to show is the Katyusha rocket. And why? The reason is because in any type of Palestinian state where Israel is not going to have control of the borders, where Israel is not going to be able to have internal security, even assuming Abbas was a Zionist, okay? However you want to put him, you're still going to have well-financed elements that are going to try to smuggle these easily portable rockets. And you can see how small they can hang on someone's shoulder. And so the problem here is if a rocket is fired, what happens in the Gaza, actually, you don't just have to look at the Gaza Strip. What happens in the Gaza Strip? When a rocket's fired, it used to be when Fatah was in control, they'd say, oh, it wasn't us, it was Hamas. Now that Hamas is in control, they say, oh, it's not us, it's Islamic Jihad. Because you really can't control a one-off or two-off or however many Islamic terrorists from firing these kinds of things. So this is the real type of war that Israel is facing if it were to cede the West Bank under any kind of peace deal. However, the 302, getting back to this, that is so big that you can't hide that kind of a rocket. So that is a state rocket, where if that's fired from territory, you can't say, oh, that's Islamic Jihad. You have to take responsibility for that. And that is something that Israel has been able to deal with relatively effectively. And it is also so large that Israel is able to sort of preemptively try to knock those down. Now, everyone should look at this and they should be saying, come on, Mark. Come on. You're not answering the $1 million question. And what's the $1 million question? Mark, haven't we heard forever that the threat to Israel from keeping the territories is the demographic threat? There's going to be more Palestinians and you're going to be overwhelmed. Okay? However, there is a serious problem with that argument. In fact, it's a right-wing argument. Why? Because it's very simple. One of the key indicia to a Palestinian state is something that's been in the news a lot, but not in Israel, in the United States, in that one of the key elements to having your own country is deciding who immigrates and is allowed into your country. So the question is, in a Palestinian state, who's going to say who comes into the West Bank? You could have thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions. In fact, that's what we're told is going to happen to all of the Palestinian refugees, which are not really even technically refugees under everyone else's definition of a refugee. But that's a different issue for a different day. So what I am saying is you cannot divorce the Katusha rocket argument from the immigration argument. Why? Because remember, what are those left-wing generals telling us? They're telling us, no problem. In 3 years or 4 years, if there's a Katusha rocket attack, we'll reinvade the whole West Bank. Reinvade the whole West Bank. And just to give you an idea, I want to quote names. General Amos Yadlin specifically told me this. And I go to him and I said, come on, let's go to Capitol Hill. And when I said, let's go to Capitol Hill, he changed his tune a little bit. He said, well, I won't reinvade the whole West Bank. If you could believe any of that. But the key question for this general, and really for everyone here, is if in 3 years, Israel has to reinvade the West Bank, how many people are there going to be in the West Bank in 3 years? Well, let's just do a little very simple graphing. If everyone sees here, this is the growth of the Palestinians under the status quo. It's just a curve. Now, some people say it's a very steep curve. Some people say it's not a steep curve. I don't get into whether it's a steep curve or a slow curve. I just use the CIA estimate. The CIA estimate is 3% a year. Okay, no problem. Now, if you have a Palestinian state where the Palestinians are in control of the immigration, what's going to happen? Well, not only are you going to have the baseline growth, or whatever it would have been, but you also have the increased Palestinians or Iranians or whoever that come into the country. So in 3 years from now, instead of there being 2 million Palestinians, whatever the number is, you'll have 3.5 million Palestinians. And so in 3 years, if there's a Katusha rocket, what are you going to be reinvading? You're not going to be reinvading the 2 million that you have now. You're going to be reinvading the 2 million plus the 1.5 million. But if you haven't even thought about the little Katusha rocket piece, you haven't even thought about how the demographic argument is actually a right-wing argument. But anyway, let's just continue on. Now, the 302s, where do they get manufactured? They get manufactured in Syria. And what happens is they get transported all the way through Iran, through the Red Sea, to Gaza. And in just one incident of a ship called the Class C, Israel intercepted these rockets. And look at this, 30, 40, they're, I can't make it out. On my screen I can't make it out, but they intercept, you see these rockets up here. Those are 302s. So now, let's just assume that we go to the zero-state solution. Does anyone have a plan to protect Cyprus? Or Greece for that matter? Now, just for everyone's information, Cyprus only has about 800,000 total Christians, and it is occupied, the northern part of Cyprus is actually now occupied by Turkey. And the 300,000 Cyprus population is less than the standing armies of Turkey and Egypt. Can you imagine? That's a scary fact. I walk into the Council General of Cyprus about 8 years ago. I put my maps down. He puts his arms out. Before I say a word, I don't say a word. He looks at me. He says, in this tone of voice, Mark, I know without Israel we're finished. Now, what does that mean? That means that the lie that we have been told that Israel is isolated in the Middle East is a total fraud. That means all of what we are being told, that Israel is the cause of instability. And I always ask the question, okay, Israel is the cause of instability. Now, what are you talking about exactly? Which Israel? Are you saying the Israel before 67 or after 67? Oh, well, the Israel after 67. But wait a second. The Israel before the 67, they still had a problem with that. And in fact, the very reason why Israel had to reinvade the West Bank was because it was so unstable. And you had all this terrorist attacks, and you had Israel, the Straits of Tiran being closed off, and so on and so forth. So now, bringing us again back to the reality of the situation here, and this is not my map. This is actually a map that was produced by the United States Director of National Intelligence on January 27, 2019, this year, 2019 in January. You've got a map that shows the arc of instability and the arc of Islamicism that is coursing through all of these Muslim countries. So now, up to now, I've been basically Israel, Europe focused. Now I'm going to change my focus. Up to now, I've been talking about Israel being the linchpin to European security. Now I'm going to go the other way. I'm actually going to show everyone here that Israel is not only the cause of European stability, but it is in fact also the cause of Middle Eastern security. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to show another topographic map. And the purpose of this map is, and you're going to have to forgive me, because in traveling through the airwaves, not the airwaves, the airline, my poor map has suffered a severe blow, and I had to administer map CPR to my map. Okay, so what you're looking at is actually a topographic map of a lot of places. But the area that I want you to focus on is this area right down here. And let me see if I have, no, don't have that. Okay, so what I'm going to show you
is so shocking to not only you, it was shocking to all of the intelligence heads of all of the countries in this world. And I'll tell you a story about that in a second. Now, what you're looking at are the Zagros Mountains and the Turkish mountains, and really what we've heard so often about Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia is the land between the two rivers, okay? Now, it's this area right here. Now, believe it or not, if you take this triangle and you nestle it right into this area right here, topographically, you are going to realize that when you look at, and this is so important, everyone, I'd like everyone to sort of open their booklets if you can real quick, because if you see it, it's really a drama. And it's on page 20. And it is really at the core of almost everything that is going on today in the world in the Middle East. Okay? So if you look at 20, what I did is I took an original Azadi map, which is in the upper right, in the upper left. And all I did is take this triangle, essentially, and nestle it here. And you will see that almost all of the oil in the Middle East is in this triangle. Now, why is that so important? Because once you understand where the oil is, you understand that Iran is this huge country, but almost 100% of their oil is only in about 5% of their land, which is in the western part of Iran. With Saudi Arabia, it's the exact opposite. 100% of their oil is in 5% of their land, but it's on the eastern part of Saudi Arabia. And in Iraq, all the oil is really in the eastern part of the country. It's all in that Mesopotamian, topographically determined place. And that is the honeypot. That is what everyone is fighting over. Everything you are looking at is related to this honeypot of what I call the black gold triangle. Everything Iran does, everything Saudi Arabia does, everything the United States does, everything revolves around that triangle in one way or another, and control of that triangle. Now, what's the game? The game is Iran's attempt to control that triangle. And what's the goal? Well, Iran's goal is to turn OPEC into IranPEC. That's what it is all about. Everything you are reading in the newspaper, Syria, it all revolves around their attempt to control this triangle one way or another, ultimately toppling the House of Saud. And so everything you're hearing against Saudi Arabia, and I'm no fan of Saudi Arabia, trust me, okay? All of this is one way or another driven by this triangle and who is going to control that triangle. And I posit the last thing the world or the United States or anybody wants, including Russia, is to have Iran in control of that triangle. And just to give everybody sort of a feeling, just on OPEC's numbers, that triangle has 56% of the world's oil supply. 56% of the world's oil supply being controlled by the mullahs in Iran. That is where we are, and that is what we're up against. So now, with that as background, let's ask a simple question. The same question that I asked earlier about Greece, the 11 million Greeks, and the 487 million Muslims. It's a simple question. What is going to happen to the Middle East if for some, God forbid, reason Israel is destroyed, or if all 6 million say, you know what, it's a little too hot in the kitchen, we're going to leave, whatever, or any combination of those two. Well, this is the graphic I made on the train ride home from that congressman 30 years ago. This is the exact graphic that I've been showing for 30 years. And it really only has 2 critical steps, past, of course, the zero-state solution step. The first step is, okay, what's going to happen to Palestine if Israel's not there? 30 years, I've shown this to hundreds and hundreds of congressmen. There's only one answer. There is not going to be a Palestine. There's going to be a larger Syria/Hezbollah, and there's going to be a larger Egypt. There was never a Palestine before, and once Israel's there, there's no need for a Palestine. Period. So all you're going to have is a little bit of a bigger Egypt and a little bit of Saudi Arabia, a little bigger Egypt, and Syria/Hezbollah/Iran. Okay. Next, Israel has been protecting the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan from time immemorial. In fact, in 1970, Assad's father, Hafez al-Assad, lined up a whole bunch of tanks. He was about to invade Jordan. And Israel said, listen, if you cross that river, we're going to annihilate you. They didn't cross the river, and so now you still have King Abdullah there. But if Israel's not there, who's going to protect Jordan? The answer is nobody. So Jordan's toast. 30 years. I've been showing this graphic for 30 years. 30 years, there's not been a single person who has ever said, Mark, that's not anything other than 100% right. And that's the only 2 steps I need. You know why? Because then, all of a sudden, Saudi Arabia has 3 new northern neighbors. Egypt, the most militarily powerful, conventional country, Arab country in the world, also one of the poorest Arab countries, who's also in control of the Suez Canal. So how anyone could expect the United States to protect Saudi Arabia from Egypt, where Egypt is in control of the Suez Canal, I have no idea. Also, you have Syria/Hezbollah being a new northern neighbor, along with an increased Iran/ISIStan, or whatever you want to call it, in eastern Iraq. So, thank you. So getting back to the question, looking at both the European theater and the Western theater, you just come to a very quick and easy understanding that Israel is not just the linchpin. Israel is the pin of a grenade that if you pull that pin, the entire Middle East/Europe will explode in everyone's face, including many of the Arabs. And that's one of the reasons why they're coming to the thinking that maybe Israel isn't so bad. Now, I have one other issue that I'm going to briefly talk about and a postscript. And that issue is what could be going on with Kushner and his peace plan. What's the game? What's going on here? Okay. Now, I have no inside information, but I want everyone to look at this map that I'm about to show you and I'm about to explain. And when it gets released in June or July, if it ever gets released, if it ever gets released, you're going to see a map, and you're not going to really understand it, except if you look back to the map that I'm about to show you. I don't have any inside information, but I'm going to show you a map. And it's also going to be a map that is going to explain a lot of what you hear from Israel. Okay? Now that map gets back to the topographic map of Israel. In that if you look at the West Bank, but you don't look at it from the top side down, but you actually look topographically up these, from a cross-sectional view, you'll see that the West Bank really is two parts. And I schematically just put it like this. In that you have the part that runs from the Jordan River to the crest line of the West Bank. Then you have the crest line to the green line. The east portion is extremely steep, if anyone's ever been to Israel. Very, very steep. And there's a consequence of that. Almost nobody lives there. Okay. The western part of the West Bank is relatively sloping. That's where everybody lives. And before '67, almost no Palestinians lived in the western part, the eastern part of the West Bank. And all of the Palestinians were located in the western part. So what happens is Israel takes over the West Bank, and there was this general, a labor general. He wasn't a labor general, but he was from the Labor Party. His name was Yigal Allon. And he says, I got a plan. I've got a plan to give back part of the West Bank. I got a plan. And when you go to Israel, you always hear there's a strategic plan. And whenever you hear the word strategic, just look out for your pocketbook and run the other way. Okay? Because you know you're in trouble whenever you hear the word strategic. When anyone says something strategic, run. And so what he means is, I've got a plan now to give part of the West Bank and keep part of the West Bank. Now, if Sarah and I were engaged in a fair bit of tug of war, Sarah, I need your help here, tug of war, and we're fighting over this plexiglass piece, okay? Sarah's fighting and I'm fighting, and she's very tough, okay? 99.9999% of people think that if we're fighting over this plexiglass piece, and Sarah's much stronger than me, gotta tell you, and we're gonna divide this plexiglass piece, 99.99% of people think I'm gonna keep the part that's closest to me, and Sarah's gonna keep the part that's closest to her, right? And so everyone thinks that, the West Bank is a tug of war, and what this general is saying, when they talk about the Allon plan and the strategic things, what they're talking about is Israel's going to keep the part that's closest to Israel, and it's going to give up the part that's furthest away. Well, everybody, got news for you. That logic takes you actually nowhere in the Allon plan. It is in fact the exact opposite. It is because the eastern part, the very steep part, has almost no Palestinians, that he thought, I can keep that part. I can annex that part. And the part that he was going to give up was Western Samaria. Now, when you look at the map that is probably going to come out, it is going to probably, to some degree, look like that. But all I can tell you is anyone who thinks Israel can give up Western Samaria and keep the Jordan Valley, well, they also thought they can give up Gaza and keep the Philadelphia corridor. And that lasted only about 2 minutes, and then it was over. Now, wait a second. You have an Israeli general saying, we're going to give up the eastern part, keep the eastern part and give up the western part. At this exact moment, historically, something else is happening. At this exact moment, the President of the United States in 1967 tasked the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the United States Joint Chiefs of Staff, to listen, I need to know what parts of the West Bank Israel needs to keep and what parts it has to give up. And believe it or not, the Joint Chiefs of Staff issued a report, and here's a map. And they came up with the exact opposite. They said, okay, we're keeping everything but the Jordan Valley. And this is their exact map from the exact report. And here, I got the pages that are declassified of the report that explain in inglorious detail exactly what I've been talking about this whole time. You've got to keep Western Samaria because at that time they were saying it would subject, if you give it up, it would subject Israel's population centers to artillery. My God, this was even before Katyusha rockets. Can you imagine now, with Katyusha rockets, what the same Joint Chiefs of Staff would posit? So in conclusion, I want to reread what Secretary of State Pompeo said. And I hope I've given everybody a prism into what he said, which is the Eastern Mediterranean is an important strategic border. Man, is it strategic. The U.S. is working to strengthen our relations with stable democracies and democratic allies there, allies like Greece, Cyprus, and Israel. Okay? Now, I'm just going to give one postscript. And it's a dramatic postscript, but I think an important postscript. Because unfortunately, what has happened is a perversion of history and almost an obscene perversion of history is going on, where somehow the biggest Israel haters and anti-Semitics in the world are somehow claiming the protection of the Holocaust. Not only that, you have analogies to the Holocaust and World War II about climate and about this. Now, I'm not saying climate isn't a serious issue. It's a serious issue, no question about that. Okay. However, I'm going to put up on the screen a picture that next time someone calls Trump a Hitler or any of these crazy analogies to World War II, I just want you to show them this picture. Okay, these two pictures. These two pictures are from a camera on December 15 to 17 in 1941. These pictures show what a Holocaust is and what was done to the Jews in Latvia by the Nazis. They were lined up, women and children were lined up by the pits and shot, and then you had someone called the kicker who went by the side and kicked the bodies into the pit. That is a Holocaust, okay? What you are seeing today is not a Holocaust. This is a Holocaust. And any analogy to this is an abomination wrapped in evil. And if you just need any further explication, because the picture really doesn't say it clearly enough. In 1942, the Brits had a bright idea. When they captured German generals, they put them up in very nice digs. Very nice digs. And these nice digs not only served them nice food and took nice care of them, they also had microphones everywhere. And it captured all of the conversations between these generals when they didn't even know they were being taped. And one of the generals, and there's lots of different, I just picked one. There's lots of quotes that you make your stomach curl. But here's one, okay? They can't have done anything worse than that. I myself have seen a convoy at Lubwitz or something, near Minsk, which is Belarus, which is near Latvia, to the east of Latvia. I must say it was frightful, a horrible sight. There were lorries full of men, women, and children, quite small children. It is ghastly, this picture. The women, the little children who were, of course, absolutely unsuspecting. Frightful. Of course, I didn't watch while they were being murdered. German police stood there with Tommy guns, and I don't know, and you know what they did there? Lithuanians or fellows like that in brown uniforms did it. Okay? So next time anyone brings up a Holocaust, just show them this page and say, this is a Holocaust. This is what the Jews of Israel are up against. And I will close with Golda Meir's quote, that by the time you come over here to defend us, we will not be here. Okay? So with that, I will open up for questions.
Yes.
Mark, thank you for your presentation. I definitely learned a lot today, and you spent a lot of time and effort and your own resources to put together these awesome topographic maps.
Thank you.
Very. So I get most of your presentation. I'm having a little bit of difficulty of understanding the threat to Greece and Cyprus. I've studied that area. I've been to the Balkans, and I've never really heard, coming from Iran or from Hezbollah or any of them, any kind of rhetoric directed against, especially Greece. In fact, until quite recently, Greece was very pro-Arab. Very pro-Arab.
Oh, that's
Very
absolutely the truth. And so now you have to ask yourself why they're building a radar station on Crete. That's an Israeli radar station. And if you speak to Greek military people, and I can show you my LinkedIn where I've sent all this stuff to Greek military people, they are totally fearful of Turkey. And what you have to, the hurdle you have to get over is you have to just assume that Israel is kaput, is finished, is not there. That's the issue. See, we're so caught up in having Israel be there that the whole concept of even what if Israel were not there, what would happen to this area is almost unthinkable. And it's a simple, it's a really relatively simple thing. In 1993, Sarah and I were of a very small minority who said, listen, if you're going to put U.S. troops on the Golan Heights, well, by golly, you should have a thorough Pentagon analysis of putting U.S. troops in the Golan Heights. Well, listen, where you have people like Omar and Tlaib, in effect, saying they really do not want any Israel there, even though they're not going to publicly say that. The real question is, why doesn't Rand and the Pentagon do a hard analysis of exactly what will happen to the Eastern Mediterranean if Israel's not there? And if I could just give you a sort of a little taste of that, if you look at my map, and for the moment, forget everything we've talked about, but instead look at it through the lens of the migrant crisis of the Islamic migrants from Africa and this whole arc into Greece and Italy and France and all of that. That is really, you don't understand that what is going, not you, but what is going on is you have a bunch of failed states there. And there is steam being emitted from these failed states in the practical result of all of this migrant. And so, in fact, there is sort of almost a de facto invasion of sorts now. That if Israel weren't there, what is going to happen to this whole tinderbox? And what is the next step? And all you need to do is look at some of the things that Erdogan has said about, and what's going on now with the gas in the Levant. You have Turkish warships threatening Exxon. Just Google Turkish warships Exxon, and you'll see that all of a sudden there is a huge fight over the gas. And what is going to happen if Israel's not being sort of an ombudsman to that gas is Turkey's going to claim all of it as a first step. In fact, Turkey's claiming it now. So there is the very incipient stages where if you go and you ask, well, is Turkey a threat to you? I think you're going to find, yes, it is a threat. And I know you're going to find that in Cyprus. And I got to tell you firsthand, when you ask the question, you're going to get the answer. So I would say do a little bit more digging and a little bit more scratching, and you're going to find that, in fact, they are fearful of this entire arc that is in front of them.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, then before we break, I would just like to first of all thank Mark Langfan for his phenomenal work and decades of dedication. I mean, this guy has been,
I love this game.
this guy has been, going from capital to capital, schlepping, carrying these maps with him, and it has been really above and beyond the call of duty forever. And I think people are beginning to wake up, at least in Israel, and we saw that. And if you look at the results of the last election, and one or two final things. When Mark was speaking about the general just coming in and saying if there's a Katyusha rocket in the West Bank, we could always go in and reclaim it. In the very beginning of Oslo, I had friends from the left in Israel that said to me about the Gaza withdrawal or about Oslo, it's only Gaza and Jericho first. If it doesn't work, we can always go in and reclaim it. And now that Hamas has really taken over, we understand how difficult that would be and how much bloodshed that would involve. So we have to be very careful before we tell the Israelis what to do with their own national security.
Exactly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody, for braving
Right.
Mueller Day.
The new storm.
Right.
Thank you.
Oh, and one further announcement. Please mark on your calendars June 12th, where we're going to have our 14th annual Rays of Light in the Darkness dinner, honoring Senator Lindsey Graham, Congressman Lee Zeldin, Congressman Ted Deutsch, Stuart and Robbie Forrest, Taylor Forrest's parents, who want to say thank you to us, and a wonderful Syrian and Druzi Israeli doctor, Salman Darka, who was responsible for Operation Good Neighbor. Thank you very much.